Happy belated Mother's Day to all you moms. And I hope yesterday was a good day for you. I really, really, really do. Today I want to talk for our few moments together about the listening face. Listening face. If you don't know, you will in a few minutes, but years ago I was a very, very angry young man. I mean tremendously angry. Ended up in a penal institution. And while I was there, I started having a lot of things going on the inside that I didn't understand. And I went one day to have a counseling session with the chaplain, Eugene Anderson. We used to call him Chappie. As I sat in his office, I don't even know the question he asked me, but I began to cry. I began to sob. I began to sob. And Chaplain Anderson, Chappie just sat there puffing on his pipe. And when I got done, he simply looked at me and said, "What was that all about?" And you know what? I didn't know. But later I realized that maybe for the first time in my life, I felt like someone was listening to me. The years go by and I eventually get released from this institution and I meet Linda, Gail, Amy. As we began to date, I realized she had that same gift as Chaplain Anderson. Of course, she would say she learned it from the phone company who taught her some skills, but I had never had a woman, a young lady who would listen to me. And when I left their presence, I just felt different. And in fact, I felt so different every time when I left Linda's presence. I thought, man, I need to marry her. It's coming August, will be 44 years, and she still has the gift of listening, and she is an incredible person when it comes to asking questions. I eventually went to Bible college, met a man named Norman Arneson. He too had that gift. Went to a church in San Francisco, met a pastor named Donald Green. He's the only pastor I've ever had. I love him dearly. But he also has the gift of listening. And I found out that I knew when they were listening because when I left their presence, there was something that I felt on the inside. I felt different. I went from there to working 7 years as a youth pastor in Vallejo, California with Pastor Terry Inman. Only God knows what he had to listen to coming out of me. But I know that when I first came there, I probably felt like Humpty Dumpty after he fell off the wall. But when I left 7 years later, I didn't feel that way because Terry Inman, God bless you, Pastor Terry, had the gift of a listening face. He listened to me and allowed me the freedom to process my emotions. He wasn't startled by my feelings. He too understood that feelings are neither right nor wrong, they just are. A lot of people just can't handle someone else's feelings, but Pastor Terry could. Which brings me to yesterday. I was on my way to my job, the District Resource Center, where the superintendent, Brett Allen, and Secretary Treasurer Dr. J and I were going to do a video for our pastors to help them prepare for when we are no longer shelter in place. And I got a call from a 43-year-old, and I'm going to use color when I describe certain people so you'll better understand what I'm talking about. See a call from a 43-year-old young man named Chris. Chris is white. He's one of my spiritual sons. We've traveled the world together, literally traveled the world together. And he says, "So what do you think about what's going on?" And I must be honest, I normally only watch the local news because I really can't handle some of the other stuff that's going on. And I listen to it normally, but sometimes, rather. He says about Ahmaud Arbery. And I had heard a few weeks earlier that something had happened in Atlanta, and I kind of followed it. But now there was a video that had been released, and my young spiritual son, Chris, was highly disturbed. And for over an hour, we talked and listened to each other on the phone. And I finally said, "Chris, why are you telling me this?" He said, "Well, what's wrong, Doc?" I said, "I'm on my way to the district office. We're going to do a video for our pastors, and that is not what I want to talk about. You see, my feelings, his words had touched my feelings. And whenever I hear of a young black man, and Ahmaud is African American, he's black, young, 25 years old, whenever something like that happens, and it's happened way too many times in our nation, I always think about my grandson. You see, my oldest grandson is 20 years old. I asked him one day, what would you do if a police officer, and I want to say this right now, I believe that the majority of our police officers are good men and good women. but there's always a bad egg, even in the profession I'm involved in. I said, what would you do if they stopped you? He said, well, Dad, I just reach for my, Papa, I reach for my, I said, son, and those of you that are men and women of color that are watching this, you know how I felt in that moment. I said, no. I said, please listen to your grandfather. And I had to show my grandson how to keep his hands on the wheels, wait for the police officer to come up, ask him for certain items, and when you go to get those items, you ask him, is it okay for me to get those items? I said, son, he has the same goal that you have. He wants to go home safe. She wants to go home safe. And you want to make sure that you follow their instructions. In fact, I took my grandchildren, a bunch of them, down to the local police station when the chief was Michael Gould, and Michael allowed me to bring my grandchildren down to meet him. You see, I wanted their first experience with law enforcement to be a positive one. You see, my grandfather was involved in law enforcement. He took pictures with them and everything else and told them, gave them his card. He says, if anything ever happens, you have any problems, call me. That was a good experience for them. I went to the DRC. We started doing the video. Before we did the video, I looked at Pastor Brett and I said, why don't you and Jay just do this? See, my emotions, they weren't right, they weren't wrong, but they were raw. And I didn't want to say the wrong thing on the video that would offend my friends, my coworkers, or offend all the pastors that would be looking at this. But there was something going on inside because something had happened in our nation. And what had happened in our nation had touched me deeply. But we did the video and I went home, and later that evening I called the superintendent up and I apologized and I explained to him what was going on in my life. And as I thought about yesterday, I thought about when I was in kindergarten and what I experienced in the little town I grew up in near race. I thought about junior high. I thought about high school. I even thought about the Bible college that I went to, and I even thought about the community that I was in as youth pastor. And all those places I experienced just racial incidents. I remember when my daughter and son, they started school, and they came home one day. She was crying because someone had used some racial slang to her. And I remember going outside crying, saying, oh God, not my grandchildren, my children rather. And then now I have grandchildren, things that they have come home and they have said about being in the school that they go to. I remember when I was a president of a statewide organization, it's just racial stuff. And sometimes I don't walk around I'm not racially insensitive. I'm not walking around with somebody says something, oh, not racially sensitive rather. But when it comes up, it brings these feelings and emotions that I don't like. Yesterday I got a picture from a young lady I've worked with for over 16 years, sharp player. And it was a picture of Ahmad that one of our leaders, Pastor Doug Heiselwood, posted. And I was blown away that this white pastor had posted a picture of this young man on his Facebook. And he had a few words of how he felt about what had happened. And I texted him. I didn't even know what I wanted to say to him, but I just said, I don't know what I want to say. Thank you for posting, and thank you for this, and thank you for being sensitive to what's going on in the world today, and not just focused on when we're going to open up our churches again. He texted me right back. Pastor Doug said, can I call you? I said, sure. So he called me, and we talked, and he listened. He says, I don't really think it was a risk, because I said, thank you for taking the risk, because it wasn't a risk. Pastor Doug said I had to speak out. He said, because this is significant to me. He goes, I need people around me. Now listen to this, my friends. I need people around me on life's journey to help me deal with painful situations like this when they arise, because I don't understand. He listened. Do you know what that means to a person of color when somebody on his scale of leadership? He just listened. He didn't try to talk me out of the way that I felt. He listened, and we prayed together. Late last night, my superintendent, Brett Allen, he sent me this text. Good evening. I'm getting ready to shut down for the day. I wanted to touch base and make certain you're okay. I hate seeing you struggle. Been hinting. I've been thinking of you all evening. Peace and grace to you. See, he listened. He listened to such a degree that it bothered him. See, sometimes all you can do is listen. He didn't try to say, well, let me tell you about my own story. Let me tell you about... And I'm sure that each one of these individuals have stories they could tell that could comparably relate to what I'm saying to them. But this young man's life had been snuffed out. Had been snuffed out. And here I am, 66 years old, and it bothered me intensely that a mother was going to celebrate yesterday without her son. I didn't know I'd feel a certain way. Never met him, never met his mother, probably never will. Then this morning when I wake up, I get a call from a young man in our organization. He's called the district youth director for our district of South Missouri. Austin Westlake is 29 years of age. And Austin was telling me how he called every one of the African-American youth pastors that's under his leadership. He said some of them didn't believe the reason that he called. You know what he wanted to know? How you doing? He just wanted to listen. And for over 30 minutes, we talked on the phone. In Austin, I was deeply touched that you reached out to those young men and you feel the way that you feel. God bless you, son. I thought about my assistant, this white young lady, Sharp Blair, who's worked with me for over 16 years. She's listened to me. Dr. David Day was, and still is, my counselor coach. Thought about my quarterly prayer team, mixed races. They come together, and I'm not even the one who leads it. They've been doing this for over 16 years, praying and listening to me and my wife. Dr. J and I in the office, we've been working together for over 16 years. We went to college together. Dr. J, thank you. There were times, and that you just listened. You didn't try to straighten me out or try to identify. You just listened, and I appreciate you. You see, there's power in the listening ear. There's power in comments like this. Wow. You've really helped me to understand something I've never understood before. These are the things that throw people off and let them know you're not listening. Oh, I understand exactly how you feel. Our father passed away years ago, and one of the phrases my brothers and sisters I have never used is, I understand exactly how you feel. Raised in the same home, raised by the same man, but we did not know, and we still to this day don't know how the other might feel. And it's demeaning when someone shares their pain with you. It's demeaning when you say something like, I understand how you feel. You don't. It's demeaning when you say, I know how you feel. It's demeaning when you say, that same thing happened to me. Let me share my story with you. Let me tell you what happened to me. And it's really demeaning when you say you shouldn't feel that way. Or when you say, we don't really have all the facts. See, feelings are not concerned with facts. My feelings yesterday were not concerned with facts. They just, all of a sudden, I had heard something. It hit me, and I felt a certain way. And I had people around me who knew me well enough just to listen. The two men, by the time I got off the phone yesterday with Pastor, the two men had been arrested. These are the facts. A mother had lost her son. But the real question is, what can you and I do? So this is what I want to leave with you. Three things. Just three things. I think these are the most powerful three things you and I can do in this situation that our nation is facing right now. Some people are marching in Georgia, and they should. I think that's needed. Draw attention to this young man's life. He didn't die in vain. But the three things I want to leave with us, those of you that I have influence with, and those of you that know me, those of you that are my friends, here are the three things. Just listen. Number one. Number two, just listen. What do you think number three is? You're right. Just listen. It's okay to listen. You don't have to try to say anything to let them, well, if I don't say something, they're going to think I agree with him. Are you that insecure? It's okay to walk away after you listen to them and say, wow, I don't agree with that. You have no idea the power you have to a lady who's lost a child or who's been abused, or to a person of color who is experiencing what the nation, most men and women of color, especially moms and dads that have children, there's a fear. But when they're able to talk to you, men, when's the last time you just listened to another man? When my dad died over 10 years ago, this coming January, I got a call from my friend, Earl Smith. Some of you know Chaplain Earl Smith. And I was upstairs in my office, and I just sobbed. I couldn't stop crying. Because the man that I've loved so many years, who stuck by me through all the crazy stuff that I went through, who never gave up on me, he was now gone. And for probably over 10 minutes, all I could do was sob. And you know what Earl said in all that time? He said nothing. See, Earl had lost his father, and he knew there was nothing to be said. And after 10 or so minutes, I just stopped crying. I said, I'm okay, Earl. He said, you all right? I said, I'm okay, man. He said, I'll check with you later. I said, all right, man. Brothers, sisters, when's the last time you just called somebody up and just listened to them talk? Listen to their pain and not become nervous and feel like you had something to say. I'll be forever indebted to my friend, Earl. There's a verse in the Bible that simply says this: be slow to speak, be slow to anger, and be quick to listen. Be slow to speak, be slow to anger, and be quick to listen. Can you hear me now? Are you listening? God bless you. And let's see if we can't make this world a better place to live by listening to each other, even when we disagree with what they're saying. God bless you.